Hey guys, Wayne Walker here, Master Hypnotist, Reflective Mind Hypnosis. Wanted to make a short video uh, concerning something that I think is important for everybody, for every hypnotist, and it could be in anything else. To be honest with you, there's a term that I was exposed to years ago, even prior to becoming a hypnotist. Uh, and that term is becoming a student of what it is that you do, to remain a student of what you do. And what that means is that you are always in the process of learning and growing. When I was a sales manager with a large company, I would have salespeople, prospective salespeople, come in and interview for the company and the positions that I would have open. And one of my questions to the salesperson that I was interviewing was this: how many years experience do you have as a salesperson? And they would say 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever the number it is, whatever length of time they were a salesperson. And my next question with that, I said, okay, does that mean that you have 10 years experience or 4 years experience, again, whatever number that is? Or do you have 1 year's experience repeated 4 times or 10 times? And many times they would just kind of look at me and go, what are you talking about? And then I would proceed to ask them, how many sales books have you read? How many sales seminars have you gone to? What kind of sales training do you continue to do? I mean, if this is your vocation, then obviously you're going to invest in yourself. What kind of investment? And more times than not, they have none. There is no investment. So they're not increasing their skill set. Okay? Well, that translates over to being a hypnotist as well. When we become a hypnotist, and we learn how to hypnotize people, that is simply the first step. And I'm going to relate this to something that I have a lot of experience in, and that's the martial arts. And martial arts and hypnosis, there's a lot of commonalities between those two things. I started martial arts when I was very young, I think around 10 years old. And I continued and made black belt at 17. Was in the military. I was on the Army Karate team. And I was exposed to a lot of different styles. My base style was Taekwondo, is where I started at. And that's pretty much by default because that was the school that was in the little town that I grew up in. And I trained. I was considered good, I guess you could say. But when I got out and I got my black belt, I had this desire to get out amongst other people, not people within my own school, because I became a big fish in a very, very small pond. And I've always wanted to get out and learn from other people. And because of that, I would go to fight nights on many different nights of the week. And I could drive an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to it. And I could go to a new school that had never gone before, but they had an open fight night, and it was like, come on in. And it was kind of like they used it as, okay, we have fresh blood. Well, there was a lot of benefit in doing that. Some of the benefit was I had a good time doing it, but I learned a lot, and it got me around other people who were much more skillful, much more had a different take on things. Because see, within the martial arts, it doesn't matter what style. A front kick is a front kick is a front kick. A side kick is a side kick is a side kick. An inside block is an inside block, is an inside block. I don't care what style that it's in. There's that commonalities. There may be variations of it. It may be a hard style or a soft style, but it is what it is. And the argument always used to be, okay, which style is better? And no style is ever, one is ever better than the other. It comes down to the individual that is training in it. Okay. Now, as a martial artist, of what I did, I trained to hurt people. Okay. Now, I did the competition, but that was a different skill set, because within that environment, you can have dojo or school sparring, you can have non-contact sparring, you can have self-defense, okay? You can have street fighting, you can have full contact, you can have point contact, you can have semi-point or semi-contact sparring, fighting, okay? Then you've got forms and you've got all these different breakdowns. And the reality of it is each one of those disciplines must be trained for individually. Now, is there carryover from one to the other? Of course. But that has to be modified. Because if you're a point fighter and you're in a street fight, those are two completely different animals, two sets of different rules, and you had better train for that environment. Otherwise, you can be a world champion point fighter and you're still going to get your ass handed to you more times than not, okay? Because of the limitation and parameters that have been placed on you and that you've trained for and that you've not understood how to break out of those things, okay? And hypnosis is a lot of the same thing. Now, you can start your hypnosis training with one instructor, with one teacher, and they have a way that they teach. They have their perception of what hypnosis is and what you should do, shouldn't do, and that, and that's great. But as soon as you get done with that, and as soon as you master what you've learned or take pieces of, then you need to be open to something else and learning and expanding, because that's not the stopping point. Because you have to, if you're going to be working with clients, you have got to get in front of clients in order to get that experience. Now, experience, understand this. When I say experience, I'm really talking about exposure. Okay? Experience is a double-edged sword. Have you ever heard the term of practice makes perfect? Most people have. I will sit here and I would tell you that is it's utterly false. It's a lie. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. That's what increases the skill set, the paying attention to the details. Because like in the martial arts, when you get into the mix of whatever it is that you're doing, if you don't practice perfectly, if you don't understand that every movement has a function and it ties into the next movement and goes into the next movement, but at the same time, it's very fluid. There is no set parameters. You have to be able to rely on muscle memory. You have to be able to rely on reaction, accommodations. Well, how do you develop those? Exposure. And the exposure of clients, if you sit down and you have 10 clients that you've been exposed to, every one of those clients are going to be different. They're going to bring to the table their own little nuances, challenges, things that you have to look at. There may be some commonalities, but yet they're different. But if you've only got 10 clients that you have that you've been exposed to, then your exposure is going to be limited, because your reaction, your taking in of information from those 10 clients are going to be limited. Whereas if you have been exposed to 100 clients, then you're going to increase your ability by a factor of 10 or 12 or 20 depending on you. Because there becomes a point where you can start, there's going to become a point at some time that when you see client number 22, 29, whatever that number is, that all of a sudden things are going to start repeating. And they're going to start seeing things, and they're going to be creating that exposure to where you're going to be able to tie in your experience to the exposure of those clients and the number of clients in such a way that you're going to be a better hypnotist. But along the way, you have to open yourself up to other techniques. Okay? And I want to give you another example. Again, a martial arts example. I spent a lot of time training, competing. Military traveled all over the place with the All-Army Karate team. I was a light heavyweight kickboxing champion of the military from 81 to 83. And I thought that I had arrived. I was there. Okay. And I was mistaken. I had an instructor in the Army. His name was Sergeant Major McCall. He was 6'6", black man, bald, muscular. And I'll fight anybody. It doesn't matter to me, big, small. And I never underestimate people. Okay. Rule number one, never underestimate people. And I remember going into the training facility where the All-Army Karate team trained. And I wanted to join the team. He said, well, you have to try out. I said, okay, what do we do? So they set up the time for me to go in and try out and that. And essentially what it was sharing my skill level, my knowledge level, techniques, forms, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, sparring, fighting. And I fought everybody in the school, some twice, fought 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 4-on-1. And then my last fight was with Sergeant Major McCall. And I had never seen him spar. I'd never seen him do anything. He was the head instructor. And I was like, okay. Now, 6'6", I'm going to move faster than he was. I was 6 foot, 180 pounds, very fast. I thought I was very fast. And there were times that I would attempt to hit him where he was, but by the time I got there, he was not there. And there were times where he would get behind me and hit me with palm strikes in my back and knock me halfway across the floor in the ring. And by the time I left out of there, having not hit him once, I had palm prints all over my body, on my chest, my stomach, huge palm prints. So I had to come to terms with, okay, something's here. Now, that style was a different style. Okay? So I learned from that. I adopted. I had to change how I looked at things based on my prior training and modify those. And there were times that I would have to say, okay, well, what I'd learned in the past that's no longer applicable to where I'm at now. And I've had different moments of that, of examples of that through my training career. And I've owned schools. I was a head instructor of a couple of different schools, took kids to the Junior Olympics. I mean, that was my life. That was what I did. And I took my teaching very seriously. And I always tell people when I trained them in the martial arts, I said, martial arts is learning to do unnatural things naturally. Martial arts is learning to change your responses, your automatic responses, control them, modify them to where they did not become a weakness. Okay? Most people, if they're in a fight, what happens is any sudden movements, they will close their eyes. Well, that's an automatic response. Well, you have to overcome that, because if you've got your eyes closed, you can't see. Okay, and if you can't see, you can't move out of the way of whatever's coming. So you have to learn how to control that automatic response. Hypnosis is the same exact way. There's a lot of things naturally that we do as hypnotists that we've always done, because hypnosis is a natural part of who we are. We go into a hypnosis every day naturally, not realizing it for the most part. So we have to learn to recognize those things. And then we have to learn how to expand our abilities with our clients. So how do you do that? Well, you get around other hypnotists. You do things that are different. I'm a firm believer in that you try everything, meaning that if you're a clinical hypnotist, you should train in street hypnosis. You should do street hypnosis. Not because that's what you're going to do, but because that skill set is going to expose you to things that you'll never experience sitting in front of a client. And it's the same thing with stage hypnosis. Doing some sort of stage hypnosis show. Now, people will say, well, I don't want to be a stage hypnotist. Okay, don't. But do it anyway. And the reason being is because by doing that, it's going to cause you to open yourself up to other skill sets that you will never develop if you don't do that. And what's the benefit of that? Well, it becomes a tool. It becomes training. How can you draw on training from something you never done when you could use it with your clients? That makes sense? So you do those things, you challenge yourself, you get out there, and what you may even discover that you enjoy doing certain aspects of that. I did comedy hypnosis shows, okay? And I'll be honest with you, I did them just because I wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted to do it because I thought it was neat, okay? I've never shied away from things like that, but neither should you. But I no longer do stage shows. I've just grown out of that. That's not my bailiwick. That's not my focus. All right. I got a lot of clients as a result of that, but that's no longer something that I participate in. Not to say I won't in the future. Somebody comes to me and say they want to do a fundraiser, I'll do it. But you have to be willing to open yourself up and get that experience, that exposure. Because if you don't, then what you're doing is you're placing, you're self-limiting yourself. And you have to be willing to step out. You see, as hypnotists, and it's an interesting thing with hypnotists, that people who go into hypnosis are an interesting breed of people. And they're an interesting breed of people because they truly, the people that want to do hypnosis and to go into developing clients and that, they truly want to help people. And that just is commendable. I didn't start out that way. I went to a school for 2 years, a hypnosis school, learned a lot in Los Angeles. I had no intention to become a hypnotist. I wanted to do it because it fascinated me. I had been hypnotized when I was younger as a kickboxer. I had a friend who was a psychologist. He also did hypnosis, and he watched me train one night. He says, "Hey, you need to let me hypnotize you." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "It'll help you." And it did. And it just freaking blew me away. So it started my journey on learning about the mind, about personalities, about rapport, becoming a salesperson, and understanding that sales is hypnosis. All the sales techniques and all the sales books, I don't care what sales book you pick up, you look at the techniques, the tie downs, the alternate choice closes, and all of the assumptive close and all these different things. Those are all hypnotic things that we use. So there's not a nickel's worth of difference in there. You could actually take probably one of the top sales books and tear the cover off it, put the new cover on it, and say, world's greatest hypnosis training book, and it would be true because of the way that you approach it, the information that's in there. So I would say that as hypnotists, be open to exploring. Always be a student of what you do. Always be reading books. Always be exploring. I can't tell you how many. That bookcase is full of hypnosis books and scripts and personality and business books. I've read most of them. I've got some right here on the desk that I've ordered. Got that one because I was told to get it. Got that one. Got that one. Got that one. This is an interesting one. Remain a student. Continue to hone your skills. Talk to other hypnotists. There was a time that I had no interest in past life regression, and for a whole litany of reasons. Until I got stuck on a client one time, and I talked to another hypnotist friend of mine, and I was telling him the challenges I was having with this client, and he asked me, he says, have you considered doing a past life regression on him? And I just kind of chuckled and go, no, I have not considered that at all. It wasn't even on the radar. And he said, okay. He basically told me, he said he could tell from my reaction that, it's just something that I didn't care to get involved with. And he was right. But he asked me a question. He goes, can I give you some feedback and some information as why you should consider past life regression? I go, absolutely. And for 30 minutes, he gave me his feedback of the reasons why, how to, what it does, what it's not, and explained it in such a way. I go, okay, well, that's interesting. So I went from not wanting anything to do with past life regression for a whole bunch of reasons to, okay, all right, well, I may not still buy into it, but based on what he told me and how he presented it, I saw some validity to it. And I will tell you that I did, in fact, do a past life regression on this individual. I had to go back and brush up on the hows and the whys and what to do and all of this and that. And did the past life regression on the person. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was okay. I had no idea what to expect out of it. But a few days later, they contacted me, my client, and said that they've had a complete paradigm shift in the challenge that we were working. They thought I was a genius. And I hung up the phone with them, and I literally tried to figure out what in the hell I did. Because, I let them think that I was a genius. I wasn't going to argue with them. But I had to do a complete reformatting of how I looked at past life regressions. And now, as a result of that, and having done a few of them with different clients very successfully, it is now a tool in my bag that I will use or suggest when I think it's appropriate. It's just a very interesting thing. So I had a paradigm shift. Now, some of you may have heard this phrase before, and this is something that we all have to understand, is my perspective, your perspective, is my reality and your reality. My perspective is my reality. Your perspective is your reality. And your client's perspective on things is their reality. And we don't have to agree with those perspectives. We got to respect them because that's what we're dealing with. If I have a client that comes into my office and they say, the sky is green, and you and I know that the sky is blue, but their perspective is that it's green, that's what I have to deal with. Now, they may change that perspective at a later date when they get more information, or they can start tying things in together, colors, and they will change their perspective. That's what growth is. But you're not going to browbeat somebody into changing their perspective. So, and that's what we have to do. As hypnotists, that's what we are masters of. That's what you should become a master of, is mastering understanding people's perspective. There's so many sayings is, you don't know what's the term, don't do something to somebody unless you walk 1,000 miles in their moccasins or something to that effect. All right. You've not lived their life, so therefore you can't judge them on that life. All right. Now, we all judge. We have certain judgments that we have. We have certain moral codes that we all have. We're not perfect in that sense. At least I'm not. But we do have to respect them and attempt to understand them. Because most of the clients that come in and see us, they've not changed in a long, long time. They're like the salesperson that came into my office and says, I've been in sales for 10 years. Well, do you have 10 years experience, or do you have 1 year's experience repeated 10 times? And most of our clients will come in and they have 1 year's experience repeated multiple years. There's no growth. There's no understanding. That's why relationships fail, because there's no growth. There's no understanding. We hang on to certain things, and as that relationship goes on, the things that used to make us giggle and laugh and so cute now irritate the hell out of us. Well, that's because we're trying to hang on to something and make it static. Relationships aren't static, they're fluid. We are fluid. You have to understand that. And that's what we do as hypnotists with our clients, is we help them understand that and help them grow past that, to develop the perspective, right? Hypnosis is, for me, and I'll argue anybody with this, is the single greatest tool that's underutilized in this world. There's nothing else like hypnosis that can have an impact in a very short period of time on an individual, so long as they have the desire to change. You can have the desire to change, and you can read the best relationship book, and you can be excited about it for a couple of hours or a day or two or whatever, and then you're back to the way you used to be. There's no growth. There's nothing there. Why? Because this hasn't changed. Hypnosis, of course, we know this as hypnotists. That's what we do. That's why we do the things that we do, because we want to help people. But as a good hypnotist, remaining a student of what we do, learning, expanding, pulling pieces out. Just like the martial arts, every movement, every block, anything here is interchangeable with one another. It's like having a puzzle that each piece will fit any other piece. It's that interchangeable. And you have to develop more pieces. You get more pieces to put in. And a lot of times we have to go back and refresh our own self on what we've learned in the past and go, oh man, I forgot all about that. I need to bring this back out. You need to make it a part of your natural self. Go back, refresh yourself, because that's what we do, because that's how we help people. We want people's success. We want to ease people's pain, their challenges, their concerns, their fears, their beliefs in themselves. To have that epiphany, to have that moment, that aha moment, and where they come back and they send you a message or they call you and just tell you that you were godsend because they needed you. You were it. Make yourself more valuable. Give yourself more opportunities to expand that. And a lot of you that are watching this, if I even release this is just something that I've, for whatever reason, I felt that I needed to say. And a lot of times it's just for my own benefit of hearing myself say it. But a lot of you that will watch this already know this, or will simply nod your head yes and go, yeah, yes. And some of you, it may be something that, wow, and it moves you to do, to expand, to grow. So anyway, that's what I have to say, and that's all I have to say about that. I hope you enjoyed it, if it ever makes the light of day. So have a good one, guys. Have a blessed day.